Don't open. There's something certainly dead inside. This is a review of the Walking Dead RPG Core Rulebook. Let's dive in. Here we have the Walking Dead Core Rulebook, but mine is a little bit different because this is the special edition, and I actually really do like this cover with the handprint and the "Don't Open Dead" inside. Unfortunately, the back does not have a description, so I'm going to go ahead and read the description from the website. In the official The Walking Dead universe role-playing game, you will play as people struggling to survive in a hostile world. Exceptional challenges can appear from anywhere, from the lack of essential supplies, from conflicts brewing within the group, from hidden construction flaws in your safe haven, or from approaching walkers hungering in your flesh. In the game, the player characters must not only hone their physical skills, but deeply explore who they truly are. What drives them to go on, what they consider worth fighting for, and what they're capable of doing, in the best and worst of times. Expect the stress and stakes to be high. The rules are based on the acclaimed Year Zero engine, pushing the boundaries of the survival genre and making sure that every group can tailor the gaming experience to suit their own interests and play style. So there you go. I really do like the inside cover for this book, and this kind of follows the same vein as Mutant Year Zero, where you get a nice map on the inside. Well, actually, this map is way better than what you get in Mutant Year Zero. But you do get a map of Northeast Georgia, which encompasses Atlanta. The starter set, I believe, has this map in it as well. The only unfortunate thing is the map is the same on both sides. But with the starter set, you do get like a different location for that big map that you get. This was published by Free League Publishing with a copyright of 2023, and the lead designer is Nils Hintz. If you've ever played any of Free League's Year Zero engine games, then a lot of the material in this review is going to be very, very familiar. It's mostly same mechanics and a new skin type of a deal, and the same certainly goes for character creation. I would classify character creation as being somewhat easy in its complexity and involvement. You pick a class, or an archetype in this case, and kind of pick things from a list. Of course, you can make up your own issues and drives, but for new players, there are just those options if you really need them. So what do we get for archetypes or character classes? We get the criminal, the doctor, the farmer, the homemaker, the kid, the law enforcer, the nobody, the outcast, the politician, the preacher, the scientist, and the soldier. Of course, with each archetype, you do get a key attribute, a key skill, and 3 talents to choose from, which you'll pick. Here you have your sample issues, drives, and some gear that you can get. You'll basically take a d6 and roll 3 times for this chart, and then you can kind of sort of dictate what your relationship to the other characters is. I would also say that this is one of those character creation types where you want to build your characters together so you can go ahead and establish those relationships with other PCs. There are 4 attributes in the game: strength, agility, wits, and empathy. So if you've played Free League games, this is pretty much the same. And each of these attributes have 3 skills tied to them. So we have close combat, endure, force for strength, mobility, ranged combat, and stealth for agility, scout, survival, tech for wits, and leadership, manipulation, and medicine for empathy. Whenever you want to make a skill test, you take the ranks in skill and attribute, add them together, and that's how many d6s you roll. Rolling 6s count as successes, and multiple successes can earn benefits such as extra damage if you're making an attack. It's a simple system, but what really makes it interesting is the inclusion of the stress dice. After you roll, you have the option to push the roll. When you do this, you take 1 point of stress and you re-roll all dice that did not come up with any successes. By the way, you do roll the stress die that you just got. If you roll a 1 on the stress die, you mess up, and there's a variety of things that can happen. Like, you can alert the swarm by making noise, which raises the threat level by 1 step. You can fail to notice a couple of walkers who close in on you for a single attack. You can run out of bullets, gas, spare parts, or other resources. You can offend someone, you can hurt yourself, you can break something important, you can get lost, or you could lose a hostage. This mechanic really adds tension to the game, and I think has become somewhat of a staple in Free League games, even if this mechanic is in only a couple of their games. Whenever a PC messes up, the threat level can go up as well, and the threat level is a measure of how many walkers are attracted to your area because of a loud noise or something else that attracts them. When the threat level goes up, walkers show up in the scene to add complications. There are times when a walker will straight up damage your character if you fail or mess up on a roll, and that's just kind of a bummer there. Combat is another one of those things that has changed quite drastically. So we have duels and then we have brawls. And duels are between two or a few people, and brawls are for larger battles. So duels are simple. You just make an opposed roll, which is either ranged combat or close combat, and whoever has the most successes deals their weapon damage to the other. I do kind of like this chart right here about opposed rolls in duels where A and B get the same number of successes, they both deal their own weapon damage, and so on. Brawls are for larger battles and is divided into 6 phases. You have taking cover, ranged combat, close combat, movement, first aid, and other. The GM calls out each phase, and then all NPCs and PCs that want to perform their action in that phase declare it. It should be worth mentioning that if 2 people are attacking each other, the rules for dueling apply here. So the roll is basically just another opposed roll. If you are reduced to 0 health, you are considered broken and can simply crawl. You also take a critical injury, which is one of my favorite aspects of the Year Zero engine. On the flip side, mental injuries are not present here, and I kind of wish they were. Instead, we get fear checks, which happen at the end of the sessions. Basically, your GM will ask you some questions, and if you answer yes to any of them, then you make a fear test, which is a straight up roll. But you do get a +2 bonus for every anchor that's still alive, so there is that going for you. I don't really like the combat rules here, mainly because it just seems like they're oversimplifying things just because. I would much rather take the drawing cards as initiative from the other games like Alien than just simplifying it into phases. It just seems monotonous, and it just seems too organized of a thing, I guess. I know, that's kind of really weird saying it now. It's too organized. Combat is too organized in this game, where it should be rough and tumble. Also, combat this time around is less tactical because you're working within those 6 phases. Whereas in a game like Alien, you really have to think about what your slow action is going to be and what your fast action is going to be, whether or not you're going to use your fast action to react and defend, or things like that. So what does the GM get to play around with? Well, actually not a whole lot, unfortunately. You do get an introduction to the lore of The Walking Dead at the very beginning of the book. You get a section about running the game, which is about what you would expect, and you get a campaign that sets up Atlanta, Georgia. The chapter on Atlanta is pretty interesting because you get the full map of the area with some locations already filled in. There are factions to discover and swarms to avoid. The main premise of this campaign is just to survive the harshness of this new world. The GM is meant to cater the playthrough to the actual PCs, adding conflict here and there to make things a little bit more personal. There really isn't an overarching story here because it's more of a sandbox experience for the PCs to run around in. They're also meant to have a haven of their own with people in it, so they do have to protect that too. The appendices toward the back of the book have some excellent tables to keep things fresh and random, such as walker descriptions, what you find in the empty room, some random locations, NPC descriptors, and what you find when you go scavenging. There are rules for solo play as well, which is very interesting because you would think that this game would lend itself very well to it. You could be like a lone wanderer or even a leader of a haven. There are oracles present to help you figure things out here, but I think a lot of the tables in the appendices will be just as relevant. Nothing really changes, although the rules try to make roles player facing, which makes sense. I have no problem with that. Overall, if it's something that interests you, then go for it. But I also think that in time, you're going to want to find some other supplements in the form of more random tables to kind of expand your game. The artwork is once again stellar. Martin Grip and Gustav Ekelund have become some of my favorite artists in the field, although some of the artwork can be a bit gruesome, so if that's a trigger for you, be forewarned. Layout-wise, the book is very easy to read, especially when it clocks in around 164 pages. Headings and subheadings are all in red and bold, so you definitely get the information clear and concisely. And the information presented actually doesn't droll on. It's actually an interesting read. There are tables throughout the book, and if I had to be really nitpicky, I kind of wish that there was a consolidated list of all the tables in the book in the index, just so it's a bit easier to find what you need. I feel like games that have a lot of these tables that you roll for, especially when it comes to just random stuff, I really feel like I want to have a list of those tables ready and present, especially if I'm going to do this solo. If there was ever a game that Free League put out that made it seem like it was just a cash grab, then this would kind of be it. This could have been a very nice post-apocalyptic style game, a zombie game, something akin to Mutant Year Zero. In fact, they could have just taken Mutant Year Zero and trimmed off the mutant aspect of it and just made it this, and it would be a little bit better in my opinion. Instead, we get an oversimplification of combat, which makes it really less than ideal. This book has kind of proven to me that Free League just needs to put out a genre agnostic rulebook of their Year Zero engine system. Kind of like what Fantasy Flight Games has done with Genesis. That way we can plug in our own settings, and most importantly, that the rules are actually consistent. Because if you take a look at all of the Free League books, starting with, Mutant Year Zero, and going all the way through each iteration from Aliens, Tales of the Loop, there's, I guess you can consider Blade Runner a Year Zero engine game as well. And you take all the mechanics, and there's just like variations of little things. Combat is the variation in this book, and it just doesn't really work for me at all. Is there material that you can use? Yes, for sure. This is one of those games that I feel confident enough that I can just take apart some of the mechanics that don't work for me and introduce mechanics from other systems like Alien into it. So that's exactly what I would do. I would take the combat rulings from The Walking Dead out and supplement with Alien's combat rules, because they kind of work a little bit better and it's more tense and it's more action-packed that way. I can sort of see why they simplified things for this book, but at the same time, I don't got time for that. I want my games deadly. I think this would lend itself very well to other zombie or post-apocalyptic style games like Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood, etc., etc. That's going to do it for this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support the series, and I will see you guys in the next video.